Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Dr. Robin Hills. He's a highly esteemed business psychologist and the director of EI for Change. Robin has taught and empowered more than 500,000 individuals across 200 plus countries with the most comprehensive and detailed courses around the topic of emotional intelligence. Robin, we're so excited to have you on the hashtag Clockedin podcast. Tell us, why is emotional intelligence important?
Well, Jordan, emotional intelligence underpins everything that we do. It underpins our decisions, it underpins our communication, it underpins the relationships that we develop, it underpins being an entrepreneur, it underpins being a leader. It is so vitally important. But I think we've got to answer the question, what is emotional intelligence? Well, emotional intelligence is the way you combine your thinking with your feelings in order to make good quality decisions and to build up those authentic relationships, but with the intent of taking action.
Yes, yes. I think that's so empowering. And where did you learn about emotional intelligence? Because I feel like this is people are talking about it a little bit more. It's not the biggest topic, but it's becoming more and more prevalent, especially with AI coming in and people are realizing that this is one of the key values that we need.
Well, definitely. Where did I learn it? I learned it through life. There were certain interactions that I was having with people when I started my career. And I recognize it, and you'll recognize it. There are some people that you can immediately connect with and you have a great affiliation with, and they understand you and you understand them. It's the way in which they use their emotions in a very similar way to the way in which you're using yours. And there are some people who you could connect with if only they would open up, but they don't and they won't. And that's down to the way in which they're using their emotions, and that's the way in which they're using their emotional intelligence. However, I didn't know that at the time. And where did I learn it from? Uh, Daniel Goleman is the master of emotional intelligence. He's the guru. He wrote his books in the mid 90s. He's an academic, but he was a journalist. And so he published his books based on the research that came out of various universities. And that brought emotional intelligence into the public consciousness. Now, I learnt about it by reading a review article in one of the papers. They were reviewing the book, and I read the review article and I thought, ka-ching, that is the answer to all my problems. The light bulb went on, and I thought, that is what I need to find out more about. So I bought a copy of the book, and it's a great book, but it is not an easy read. And most people don't get past the first few chapters, but I persevered. It is a very good book. But I learned my art through distilling the information out of it and making it practical.
Yes, yes, and we'll dive into that because I think it's so important for us to connect things to real life examples. Because it's one thing to read in a book, it's another thing to actually apply it. So for you and your journey, when did you decide I'm taking this emotional intelligence to the next level? Because obviously I know you had a career before that. What was that tipping point for you?
Well, the tipping point was it happened a couple of times along the way, and I just had not got the confidence to grab the bull by the horns. I don't know whether you're familiar with that expression.
Of
It's a great
course.
English expression. Grab the bull by the horns and to actually take the leap of faith and to set myself up in business. My role was made redundant on 3 occasions. And after the third occasion, I thought to myself, do you know, I can make myself redundant here. What do I want to do? What really motivates me? What is it that excites me? And I really realized it was people development.
Yes.
And I set up a business during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, specializing in emotional intelligence. Now, it wasn't widely known at the time, so it really did need a hard uphill sell in order to get people to understand what it is. And I've just taken it from there.
And how did you overcome the fear and the lack of confidence? Because I share that because I know a lot of the audience is experiencing that. I experience that. We all experience that. So how do you build that confidence?
I think that for me, that confidence had to come from within. I had to decide that I needed to do it. And it was filled with fear, and it was filled with trepidation, and it was filled with these questions: am I worthy? Can I do it? And I think ultimately it's really a case of coming to terms with that. We hear about imposter syndrome all the time. Yes, I've got imposter syndrome, even though I've been doing this for 15 years and I'm well known and well respected globally around the topic of emotional intelligence. Have I just said that? Because that's the imposter syndrome kicking in
Uh,
and me thinking to myself, I'm not worthy.
100%, and we're all going through this. And even in our pre-call, it was pretty funny. I go, Dr. Robbins Hill, how did you become? Because one of the titles, one of the awards he received was the best transformative emotional intelligence coach of the year in 2024 by CIO Times. And you start to sit there, and he's like, "That's me," and you start to realize that no matter what we do, we have to step into who we want to be. And we have to make a decision one day that this is going to embody who we are. And I think that's so important because so many of us just sit in the roles that society has placed us in, or our job has placed us in, or our family has placed on us. But we haven't really decided for ourselves what we want to be placed as.
No, that's right. Now, what I would encourage anybody and everybody to do is to look at their skill set and actually ask a very deep personal question. What is it that makes me special? What is it that makes me stand out from the crowd? What is it that makes me different? Now, when I'm coaching people, and it doesn't matter whether it's at the graduate level or whether they are successful entrepreneurs in charge of many hundreds of people, the imposter syndrome kicks in. And everybody can tell me what they're not good at,
Yeah.
but people find it very, very hard and very difficult to tell me what they are good at.
Yeah.
And that's where the deep searching comes in. And this is what I do in terms of helping with people, because I'm not interested in what people can't do. I'm interested in what people can do. And if they can do something that I can't, that's even better.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I had Jeff Hoffman. He's the co-founder of Priceline, and he was on the podcast a while back, and he said that one of his top ways of figuring out what you're good at is reaching out to 10 people you work with in a pretty regimented fashion and ask them what they think your top attribute is. And the reason for that is because then you get to learn what everyone else thinks about you. And you can find out these top tips because, like you're saying, most people don't realize what they are good at.
No, this is it. When I run a live workshop on emotional intelligence, one of my exercises that people find very, very challenging to start with, and they don't want to do it, is to get their mobile phone out. And I tell them to get their mobile phone out. Now, most trainers say, put your mobile phone away and switch it off and don't have it in the training room. But I say, right, get your mobile phone out, switch it on. I want you to text 3 people. It can be your family, your friends, your colleagues. You can text each other if you want. But what I want you to text is, I'm in a training session learning about leadership and emotional intelligence. What are the qualities that you really value and respect in me? Now, people will look at it and think, I can't do that. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And you find that what will happen is that after a while, and I do this during a coffee break, just before the coffee break, so that they've got the coffee break to go and moan to each other about it and then do it. And it gives us the coffee break for the text to come in. But once they get one text, it's like a rolling stone or a snowball. They just text more and more and more and more people. And I say, oh, okay, look, we only wanted 3, but you've got 10 come in. So what I then do is get people to write down the essence of each of the texts, and I get them to put it on a piece of flip chart paper, and then they have to stand up in front of the group and say, I am good at Not I think or I've been told. They have to look people in the eye and they say, I am good at doing this. And it is such a powerful exercise. I've had delegates in tears because people have said nice things to them that they've
Yeah.
never heard before.
Yeah. And it is really powerful because a lot of the time you sit and this is just for if you're wanting to support someone or wanting to be there for someone and you think these positive attributes about somebody, you should let them know. You should send out the text and just say, "Hey, Dr. Robin, I think you're really good at this." And it might be an uncaused text, but I'm telling you, you start to do that, that will deepen your relationships with people exponentially more than here's my drama for the day. Here's my why I'm upset. You learn so much more about yourself and it's so much more powerful. So, what are some of the things that you think society is missing in regard to emotional intelligence, and where can people learn and expand on this a lot?
Well, I think what people miss in terms of emotional intelligence and in terms of interactions with other people, either on an individual basis or at a group level, is the fact that people overlook being kind to other people. Now, that doesn't mean to say they have to be nice, but they have to be kind and they have to understand and they have to listen to other people and they have to take on board what other people are telling them and they have to work with that. And I think in terms of any relationship, if you leave somebody walking away from your interaction, either feeling good about themselves because it's justified, or not feeling good about themselves because you have pointed them on the straight and narrow according to your values, and you know that in the long run it's going to help them, then you've had a good interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really is fascinating. I had a coaching group this morning and we were talking about the levels of listening. So I was saying that level one is when you're just not even listening to the other person. Like you're just interrupting them, speaking over them. Level two is when you might share your opinion and then I just share my opinion. It's a zero value. And then level three is when you hear their problem and you actually dive deeper on that problem and try to help them with that. And then level four is when you hear what they're actually not saying, but what they are feeling. And a lot of us don't have parameters for the depth of listening. And I think that's so important because it really helps us understand what other people are trying to get across. And you can become, people can enjoy your interactions so much more if you just ask them three questions in a row. Like they will
Oh,
enjoy you a lot more.
it is, and the trick there is to learn the art of open questions. So many people, when they ask a question, will start with a "Do you think?" which really means this is what I think. I want you to either agree with it or disagree with it. The open questions, I mean, you know this, Jordan, so I'm not speaking to you directly, I'm speaking to the listeners, and many of your listeners will already know this. But you start an open question with what, why, where, when, who, or how. And if you start a sentence with one of those words, it will automatically be an open question. But you've got to be very, very sure of the fact that you are utilizing that open question in a supportive, kind way. Otherwise, people will find it very um, invasive and they will
Yes.
be very reactive to it and they will think that you're being aggressive or nosy. So you've got to be, you've actually, it's a balance between asking the open question because you're really truly listening and prying.
Yeah, because you can feel it instantaneously with people how they come off. So, if someone was to level up their emotional intelligence, what do you think that would give them? Like, what would that change in their life?
Well, it'll give them more self-awareness. It'll give them more understanding of who they are, what their strengths are, what their limitations are, and when they can get in the way. It'll also help them to empathize with other people because it will give them a deeper understanding of themselves and and the impact that they have on other people when they're interacting with them. So it will also help them with their communication skills, and it will help them in terms of collaboration and teamwork and in terms of leadership. So again, it's all fundamentally underpinned with emotions and emotional management. But all of that is really going to be positive because overall it will help people in terms of their health and well-being.
Yes, yes, exactly. Which is the underlying pretty much of what it all is that we want to get to know ourselves better. And we want to be happier with what we're at instead of focusing on all our limitations and what we're not capable of doing. Because you can always hire people or bring other people in to help and assist in those areas. But it's really us realizing what is possible, which I think this kind of opens that avenue for that.
Yeah, look, let me share with you a piece of personal information here, Jordan, and I'm quite happy to share this. Um, People would say that this is great weakness. It's a great limitation, but for me, it's one of my great strengths. I'm actually very deaf. I wear hearing aids when I go out socially because I cannot hear. Now, the great thing about that is it's taught me to listen. So I lost my hearing in my mid-20s, so it seems. And obviously, I've built up compensating mechanisms for it over the years. So over the years, I've learned to pick up nuances around body language and facial expressions, which gives me this skill in terms of understanding people at a deeper level and being quite empathetic. And people say to me, "Oh, you're a good listener, Robin." And I think I could be a lot better. So obviously, people are experiencing something in me that they don't experience in other people. Like I say, I've just got to look at it and say, that's my superpower. So rather than it causing me a problem, oh, I'm deaf, I can't hear. Yeah, I can't hear. So I work around it. It's it's not my problem, it's everybody else's because they got to alter their behavior around me in order to make sure I've heard what it is that they want to communicate. It's not my responsibility to hear, it's their
Yeah.
responsibility to make sure I've heard.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that because what you're really realizing here for the audience to understand is that Robin is practicing his hearing every single day. And by the depth that he's practicing, that's why he's become a better listener. So if you ever put yourself in these situations where you dim down some of your senses and then you focus more on your hearing going into a conversation, you go into the conversation, you think, I want to hear very deeply. You will have, with that intent, you'll have better conversations because the intent is everything and that understanding of what is it that I'm really trying to get out of this? Because a lot of people are just aimlessly talking to talk and they're not having those deep conversations. And I think that's the origin of like real focused intent, which increases your skill of listening. 100%.
Sure. Jordan, let me give people a fun way of improving their listening. And a lot of people do not do this, and it surprises me. Um, when you are listening to a piece of music, perhaps you've got your headphones on, don't have the television on, don't read a book, don't do anything else. Just sit and listen to the music. You'd be surprised what you pull out of a piece of music, stuff that you've never heard before. It really is fun. Just try it. Try it for 5 minutes with one song and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, because it really comes down to our presence. And I think when we're super present with something, we get so much more out of it. And when we're trying to do 100 things at once in this multitasking world where we're texting and doing this and that, the presence is really what opens us up to that
It
true satisfaction and happiness.
it is, and I would suggest people put their mobile phones away, even if it's for an hour a day, and just go and do something completely different. You'd be surprised. You will miss it, but you won't miss anything.
100%. I mean, that's literally one of the that's the reason I use the camera for the podcast. I have my phone as the camera. One, it's a better camera, and then two, it limits all distractions so that I can be completely present with people about these conversations because it does
Yeah,
make
I
a
put
difference.
I put mine in the other room, Jordan. I can't be distracted. Oh, Jordan's
I,
talking. I'll have a quick look. No, it's gone. It's not here.
yeah, and it really does open up a lot of things. And if you're going to like a workout class or doing anything, if you're able to put your phone down, then you can be truly present in said activity. So for you, Dr. Robbins, you've lived an incredible life. How do you think people will get to that incredible life? How do the people create that incredible life for themselves? Because there's so many people that are unhappy through comparison and all these different things. But how do you create that life that you're really looking for?
Well, I think you've answered it within the question. People are comparing themselves with other people. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. Just be you. The sort of things that you are doing, Jordan, is absolutely phenomenal. Look at hashtag Clockedin podcast. It is unique in itself. That makes you an expert in hashtag Clocked In. Nobody else is doing it. So that
Yeah,
makes you a specialist in that area. So just
yeah.
try and identify what your specialism is. Now, I just know you, Jordan, through hashtag Clocked In podcast. I know you're a coach, and I know that you do other great things, but that's for you to decide what those great things are. Don't compare yourself with other people. And I think it's a case of getting the balance right. It's a case of having humility and taking away the arrogance. So when you were talking about, oh, I've had a special life and all this sort of thing, yeah, everybody's got a special life. I think the important thing is we've only got one life. Make the most of it. Do what it is that energizes you. Do what it is that will help you to get up in the morning and to greet the dawn or greet the day with enthusiasm. Now, I know a lot of people can't do it in the way that you and I do it because they have to get up to go to work. Now, getting up and going to work because they need to be earning a salary in order to provide for their family. Okay, that might be the phase of life that they're in at the moment. What does the future look like? What are you going to be doing in 5 years' time? What is your 10-year-old self going to say to you when you haven't done it? Sorry, the person that you are 10 years from now, what are they going to say to you now if you haven't done it?
I completely agree. I think there's two pieces that we really focus on. It's our planning time where we step back and we kind of reflect on what we're doing and where does that take place, and then we're putting in the action towards that. And when we're able to do that, we can adjust our plans. We can't, and then we have different action steps and we it creates different habits and it creates a different life for ourselves. And a majority of the time, from what I've seen, is a lot of people don't ever lift their head up and readjust the plan because they sit there and go, "Oh, life's great right now. Fantastic." If you don't want to change anything, amazing. If you do want to change something, you might have to readjust that plan and start taking action towards that and start putting
Yeah.
in the effort to get there because if we don't do that, we're never going to accomplish what we truly are meant to be here for. Because if you really think about it, it's super interesting back in if you back it up to like the 1900s, people never traveled. That was very uncommon. There wasn't planes, there wasn't areas, there wasn't ways to go to all these different places, and people just lived where they grew up and they just did their thing. But now it's there's so much accessibility, there's so much remoteness. Like you're in the UK, I'm in Tampa, Florida. Like there's just a lot of opportunity here, and we have to realize that and stop being so I had like the conventional living way is not the same as it's been before.
No, this is it. And I think nobody knows what the world's going to be looking like in 50 years' time. And I think what we've got to do is to look with great optimism and say that it will be different. When I started my career back in the early 80s, right at the beginning of the 80s, come on, let me be really honest with you. When I started my career back at the beginning of the 80s, nobody had a computer, nobody had a mobile phone, the internet hadn't been invented, emails had never been sent. We just did everything over the telephone and by letter and fax. And then there was CFAX on the television, if you could get that to work. So the world has changed considerably in the time that I've been working. So if anybody had said to me when I was starting out in my career, oh, by the time you get to a point where most of your contemporaries are retiring and you should be thinking about retiring, Robin, you'll be doing sound engineering, video editing, creating online courses, I'd have just looked at them and said, don't be silly, I've got a biology degree.
Yeah, and that brings back to a bigger point for the audience to realize is that we're always learning. And if you're not open to this learning in this new way, then you're not going to be able to grow in your own capacity. You know what I mean? Life is about enjoyment, but it's also about what can we learn and how can we grow and how can we learn these new things and apply it to our life and create a better life experience than we've ever had before.
Sure. Can I take one of the points that you've been talking about, Jordan? Because every coach seems to do exactly the same, and I concur with it. And I think it's absolutely right. You've been talking about plans and you've been talking about goals. And the thing is, I think plans and goals are great, and you've got to have a goal and you've got to have a plan, but don't be too precious about either of them. Think of life or think of business as being like a game of chess. And what
Yes.
you're trying to do is to win the game. That is your
Yeah.
goal. Now, your strategy will be how do I move the pieces 2 pieces ahead in order to put myself in a position of strength? So
Yeah.
if you look at life in that way, rather than, oh, by the end of 2025 or 2026, I must have sailed around the world in a large yacht, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoy that reframe because I think the reframes are really what allow us to think differently, and that's where the growth happens. So if it's just thinking we're all playing a game, how do we optimize for winning the game? Then you're going to think about it differently, and especially the trajectory of how long we think, I think makes a big, big difference. For example, when I started this podcast, I was 24, I think. And my thought was when I'm like a grandpa in 70s and 80s, I want people to be able to see the conversations I was having. That was my original thought. I was like, "Oh, I think this would be cool to have deep conversations and be able to share these." So when you have a long perspective, yeah, and you realize the game is long, you can think a lot better than the day-to-day discussions.
Yes, that's right. And now, as a grandpa, I am looking at what I've achieved as a legacy.
Of
So
course.
what is it that I can hand on? And you have a brilliant podcast here, 220 plus episodes.
Yeah.
Now, nobody's going to take that away from you. So
Yeah.
it means that you've got a lot of great experience in terms of producing podcasts and getting them out there in the ether and get them listened to. So perhaps that's something you could be teaching people. And perhaps we ought to have a conversation, you and I, about it at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you never really know what your skill set is and you never know what you're going to step into. But if you don't put yourself out there, you can't achieve that opportunity. Because I think that's what holds a lot of people back is the going, I'm not sure. I don't really know. I'm not. But it's that emotional intelligence of realizing, hey, nobody knows. We all have to
No,
start
that's
somewhere.
That's it. And I go back to one of the phrases that really inspired me when I set up my business. Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
Yes, yes. And so many people want everything to be perfect. And if I was, nothing is ever perfect, and that's okay. That's okay. I was watching a very high end done podcast and somebody interrupted and they just let the film run because it's like, you want me to edit it out? Like who can at this point it's just share your knowledge, share what you know, share your experience and see what comes to you because I think it makes a huge difference for a lot of us.
Yeah. So if any of your listeners are listening to this conversation and say, oh, I will do this when this has happened, forget it. It won't ever happen. I will. I'll set myself up in business when I've earned $50,000 a year. You won't, because you'll get yourself into a situation where you are so comfortable and you rely on that $50,000 a year that you just will not break away from it.
Yeah.
So, if the time is right, grab the bull by the horns. Again, I've spoken to you about my 3 redundancies. They were the catalysts that set me on my way to setting up with myself in business. If they hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be talking to you now.
Wow.
I would have retired from a corporate role that I'd been doing for 40 odd years. Probably very happy, but something inside of me would have been missing.
Yes, and I think that's what it's all about is finding what actually makes us happy, especially when we start getting to that retirement stage, because you start to realize that retirement's just it's just an idea. It's limiting the workload and making it where you're able to continue on. Like we're having conversations now. This is probably a lot easier than what you were doing work-wise prior.
Well, it is. It is, but people are saying to me, "Oh, when are you going to retire, Robin?" Well, what am I going to do when I do retire? I'm having great fun talking to Jordan Edwards on his podcast. Isn't that part of retirement? I enjoy the challenge of going out there and helping people, and it provides me with money that complements and supports my pension. So,
But if you yeah, but if you didn't start this, then you don't have that opportunity, and
oh no, this is
that's
it.
basically what I want everyone to realize is like whatever that goal is, whatever that plan is for you, I want you to jump in and start taking very, very, very small steps in that direction, whatever that might look like. That might be 30 minutes a week that you allocate to your future self, and you'll be so grateful for that.
No, that's right. Jonathan, this is a live podcast. My computer has just told me that it's about to run out of battery. So if you'll bear with me, I'll go and plug it in.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. And that's why I think it's so important for us to realize that when we're doing things and when we're trying to create things, like 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 Dr. Robin said, nothing is ever perfect. We're all going through this stages of our life and we're all just trying new things and we're seeing what works and what we like and what we don't like. So, Dr. Robin, I know for you you've done many courses, you got new books. Tell us about what's going on with the books.
Well, the book, I bought a copy in to show everybody. The book is The Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience in Business, Strategies to Weather Storms in the Workplace. And it was published last month by the Right Book Company, and it's available in all good bookstores and it's on Amazon. That's one way of connecting with me and finding out more information. And then I have a range of courses on emotional intelligence, and you can go to emotional.intelligence.courses/collections to see all of them. Or you can go through the website ei4change.com. That's ei number 4change.com.
Awesome. I'll put all that in the show notes. Dr. Robin, you have been amazing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the energy. I appreciate learning about emotional intelligence. Thank you.
Jordan, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. Thanks.